What's up, guys? Today is gonna be something different. Not so much a rambling, but or a rant even. But here's the thing. So I got this idea in my head, and unfortunately, I am not a game developer. I'm not a programmer. I'm not. I can't develop 3D assets. I know about all that stuff because of my love for video games. I've just been kind of exposed to that at some point. But your uncle don't got that kind of time or that kind of like bandwidth to sit there and learn all that stuff. Because I did try a long time ago, back in 2013, 2012, 2011. I dabbled with it, and it ain't for me. it just, I don't know, maybe it's a me problem. Maybe I just give up too easy on things, but it's too time consuming for me. Way too time consuming. And it could also be that I was just, a noob. I didn't know what I was doing, obviously, and I only had whatever information was available online to, try and learn how to do it. So, blah blah blah. So here's the thing. I think it'd be cool if Nintendo made a turn-based Zelda RPG. Now, before I was getting ready to spout all my thoughts out, I was thinking to myself, is Zelda technically an RPG? It is. I know it is. But it's is it an action RPG or is it just like a standard RPG? What's the official genre of Zelda? I get back in 1998, Ocarina of Time won Best Action Game, but we now have the gift of hindsight, and we know, it's an RPG of some type. So is it an action RPG? Is it just a standard RPG? Does RPG even need a subgenre to accompany it, like turn-based RPG, action RPG, etc., etc.? So anyway, I was just food for thought. I was kind of what category does that fit in technically? But maybe you know the answer. Tell me down below. So here's the thing. Here's my pitch. I want it to be a turn-based RPG. A lot of, I don't know, we'll just assume that a lot of Zelda fans don't necessarily play RPGs. I feel like that's not true, having said it out loud. But for now, let's just assume that Zelda fans don't play turn-based RPGs, and it could be JRPG or RPG. That element doesn't necessarily. Obviously it matters because they're two separate genres technically, or a subgenre of turn-based RPGs. But so here's my pitch. So it'll be a turn-based RPG. Very much like Final Fantasy X, just in terms of mechanics and stuff. Because I don't know about you guys, but Final Fantasy X was a very user-friendly, very baby's first RPG. Not to discredit it. Final Fantasy X is one of my favorite games of all time. But I remember even a dum-dum like me was able to pick it up and play it to great effect. And I was able to pick up on, how it all worked and blah, blah, blah pretty quick. Make a pit stop right here. Alright, I'm back. So, if we do it in the style of Final Fantasy X, I think that'll be very easy to pick up, right? For anybody who's never played an RPG but maybe is a fan of Zelda. So picture this, if you will. I'll get into story stuff later. Might even do a part 2, who knows, but let's talk gameplay mechanics. So, in Final Fantasy X, they got what's called an overdrive gauge, kind of like a limit break, right, from previous Final Fantasies. In Final Fantasy X, you can switch the mode of the overdrive. So basically, the mode is how you would accumulate more overdrive bar or meter, right? So I want to bring that mechanic in. I think Final Fantasy X had too many categories, in my personal opinion. They had like Warrior, which is like anytime you did damage. They had Slayer, which is like you get bigger chunks, but you had to kill the enemy. You had to land the final blow. Healer, Allied, they had so many, like, I would argue too many. For like for like baby's first RPG, I think it was a little bit many. This person does not know how to drive. He's just standing there at a green light like a dickhead. Anyway. So I definitely want to bring back those, like, how you accumulate the mode. Well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. In this game, you're gonna have what's called Triforce gauge, or maybe you could just Triforce power or something. We'll come up with a better name for it, but basically that's how you gain your move or your ultimate move. And there'll be one, it won't just be. I don't think that's too complex to have more than one. Triforce move something. Yeah, see, like Triforce move just sounds, it does not roll off the tongue. I have to come up with a different name, but here's the thing. So like in Final Fantasy X, everybody had their own individual, overdrive maneuver, blah blah blah. In this one, kind of like what the Super Mario RPG remake did, I want there to be like a collective move, right? A unified move, tag move, whatever you want to call it. Now, another thing is for the more versed Zelda fans out there, you know that there are only 3 pieces of the Triforce. Those typically belong to only 3 characters, 90% of the time. And it's Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf. So right off the bat, Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf are full characters. You won't get Ganondorf till like a little later. I would say early on in the story that I got cooked up. But in the meantime, because you're only going to have 2 of the Triforce pieces, right, Zelda and Link's, they can do kind of like a team one just between the 2 of them. But I'm not going to limit it to just Triforce users. So like another character that I definitely want to be playable in this hypothetical Zelda RPG is what's her name? I'm brain farting right now. She's like Zelda's bodyguard. Impa, there we go. Man, minus points for the Zelda nerd. So like Impa, everyone will have like this Triforce gauge. That's just what we're gonna call it, but obviously canonically only those 3 have the Triforce. So like other characters who aren't Triforce wielders will still be able to like participate in these team up attacks. Because I don't want to leave them out. That's kind of lame if only 3 characters can, because if you have more than 3 characters in this RPG and only these 3 characters can perform a certain move, nobody's going to want to play any of the other characters. They're just going to want to play those 3 because they're the ones who have the triple move. So we can't do that. Ooh, it's foggy out here. Another mechanic that I definitely want is so in Final Fantasy VII, they had materia, right? And like different materia did different stuff. And they also had summon materia, right? So that would allow any character to summon a monster, provided they had the right material, right? So in Final Fantasy X, they kind of like took a step back on that aspect of it. In Final Fantasy X, only Yuna could summon anything, any kind of monster or whatever. They were called Aeons in that game. So in this game, I'm thinking we do like a slight combination of the two. So instead of just one character being able to summon everything, different characters will be able to summon like character-specific summons. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. So, for example, Ganondorf, right? Ganondorf's summon isn't really a summon; it's more like a transformation. The rest of the party will back off, and he'll transform into Ganon. I'm thinking, I don't know. I kind of really like his just super crazy design from Hyrule Warriors. But I might go with a more, on my head, I'm picturing the one from Smash Ultimate that they made, which is basically just like a nicer quality, higher fidelity version of the Ocarina of Time one. So he would turn into Ganon, and then you'd be able to battle it out. And because it's more of a transformation and not a summon, Ganon can, he can revert back to Ganondorf if you decide to do so. Zelda, because she's she has the Triforce, Zelda will be able to call forth, I guess Zelda's isn't really a summon now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, that's a little different, but for Zelda, she'll be able to summon, we're going to cook up some creatures for her, but she'll be able to summon those via the Ocarina. I was going to say that she'd be able to summon like, kind of like Bayonetta does in Smash Ultimate, like she can summon like a leg or a hand, right? It would be basically like a foot or a hand of one of the goddesses. But that, like I said, like that now that I'm thinking about it, that's not really like a summon. That's more of like a... Oh, I got it right now. Boom, it just clicked. So in Twilight Princess, they have like the light guardian spirits, or the spirits of light, or the four creatures of the game. There was the lemur, the snake, there was an owl, and a goat, if I remember that correctly. So Zelda can summon them, and those can be like summons, right? Link's not gonna get a summon. He's gonna get his ocarina. By the way, every character is gonna get a musical instrument of some kind, and that's how they're gonna be able to like cast magic and stuff. So like Link and Zelda will have ocarinas, or no, Link will have an ocarina, Zelda will have a harp. We'll give Ganondorf some kind of cool instrument, and so like they'll pull out the instrument, and that's how they'll cast the spell. So for Link, I thought it'd be dope if when he uses his ocarina, instead of a summon, he can play the Song of Time. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me back up just a little bit. So like, Link will be able to use the Song of Time, but it'll have like multiple functions. So like each song will have another menu, and you can pick from that. So like, for example, like if I'm playing as Link and I pull out the ocarina and I play the Song of Time, I could speed up myself, I could speed up the party, I could speed up the enemy, I could slow down the enemy, stuff like that. Like speeding up or slowing down enemies and allies in RPGs is like pretty commonplace. So for Link, he'd be the one to be able to do that. Because I still want to stick to like traditional, like this character has a specific role to So I don't want to just give everybody that ability. I want everybody to have magic to some extent, but it's like, again, it's like exclusive. Like Ganondorf has dark magic, right? And he has spells that could like buff, buff or debuff the enemy and buff the party, right? Like his is all stat stuff. He can increase your power, increase your magic, or decrease it, right? Whereas like Zelda would have like healing stuff, status, curing statuses, and things like that. Link could have like things that increase your evasion, things that increase your like luck or your critical hit, that kind of stuff, right? So that every character has like a specific job still. So blah blah blah. So Link with the ocarina, playing the Song of Time, can speed up, slow down, blah blah blah. But then he could also, as another option, travel through time and basically turn himself into Young Link. And Young Link will be completely different from Adult Link. So Young Link will be like Majora's Mask, right? He'll have all the masks and stuff. And so the Young Link, he'll be able to put on like the Fierce Deity mask, right? That'll be like kind of like Ganondorf. That'll be his summon. And of course, like Final Fantasy X, you'll be able to tag out to like all the other characters. Much like Link, Zelda will also have a spell or whatever that would allow her to transform into Shink, and then Shink will play totally different. So I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there were other mechanics that they had come up with. That's all I can think. If I remember as we're going along here, I'll bring it up. But now let's talk about the story. So there was a theory that I had read online a long time ago. I think it was about, what was it? It had something to do with Zelda 2. It's the one where Zelda's asleep, right? Like they put a curse on her and she fell asleep. She wasn't dead or nothing. She's just out cold, right? But was it Zelda 2? So basically, this was the overarching plot of the thread. Zelda was put in like stasis because she fell asleep. So they kind of like whatever magicked her up. That means to stay alive, but obviously she would never wake up for whatever reason due to the spell. And so the theory was if enough time had passed, because the goddess has to reincarnate Hylia, would there then eventually be a second Zelda, or would there never be another Zelda until that one perished? And so it got me thinking, like, what if we went with that first option, and because the first reincarnation never perished, a new Zelda had to come into existence, right? Because it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's a little like the Wind Waker, right? Like that Link in the Wind Waker doesn't have any direct connection to any of the previous heroes, because they flooded Hyrule, right? And so it's like everybody bit the dust pretty much. So that's like a brand new ordained chosen hero. So I got to thinking, okay, so in this version of Hyrule, much kind of akin to like how Tears of the Kingdom's story starts, where like they're investigating deep underground Hyrule, right? And they find Ganondorf. This one's going to have a similar setup. Zelda's leading, like a mining excavation, because this Zelda's like very hands-on, kind of like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And so she's down there, and she's doing research while the team's doing all the mining and stuff and the exploration. And that's when they stumble across the chamber with the sleeping Zelda. Now, in our story, she's in stasis, right? So she's not... Because this is like hundreds of years into the future, right? So the person who put the curse on her is long past. And so, for the sake of argument, we'll say that... that because that person has perished and is no longer, that the curse also is broken. But because she's in stasis, she does not wake up. So they find her and they release her. And so everyone's, they're all in disarray or whatever because she looks exactly like Zelda. Now, I thought it'd be cool if we made it so that this Zelda only speaks Hylian, like ancient Hylian, right? Like, it'll be a whole different language. Zelda would speak English or whatever, like, we'd all be able to understand her. But, the old Zelda, we'll call her the old Zelda for the sake of argument. But the old Zelda only speaks ancient Hylian, and so I think that would be kind of funny to kind of have this character running around, like a fish out of water scenario, right? Like, this old Zelda has no idea how anything works, and so she's all in wonderment about all the stuff that they got in modern day Hyrule. So anyway, so then the chamber that old Zelda is in has writing on it and stuff, because they sealed it off hundreds of years ago. And so there's, inscriptions, instructions, things of that nature written on it. And through these inscriptions, Zelda kind of pieces together that, like, she reads it and sees that it said Zelda. Like, this person is called Zelda, just like she is. And so that kind of gets her to piece together that, there's, like, we get reincarnated every so often. At first she thinks it's everybody, like all of Hyrule, but as the story progresses, as the research team continues, because Zelda starts to kind of like break away from that part of it to be part of the team to actually play the game. But as the story progresses, they find out more and more that it's actually not just everybody in Hyrule, it's just Zelda. So like the first part of the game is just escorting Zelda around to the kind of like, what was it, in Breath of the Wild? It was in Breath of the Wild, like the story before, like one of the memories where she goes to every fountain trying to awaken her powers. So she goes to all the fountains, she already has her powers, but she goes to these fountains for guidance. She's like seeking out the goddesses for, like enlightenment or whatever. She's like trying to figure out, like, what the heck is going on? Why is there another me? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. So one of the goddesses just outright reveals that to her, like, or I guess not reveals, but like confirms it, like, yes, anyone who's bared, I don't want to say that way because that's not canonically correct, but for just to oversimplify, it's like anybody who's wielded the Triforce will become reincarnated, right? So now she has that realization Also, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but for the sake of this story, the Triforce is currently broken up. And obviously Link has the courage piece, Zelda has wisdom, and Ganondorf's got the power. So Zelda already has that knowledge. She knows Link has it, she knows she has it, and she knows Ganondorf has it. So now that she has this information, she now has a campaign to go across Hyrule. Let's say Hyrule. To meet with King Ganondorf, because he's the king. In this particular game or timeline or whatever, Ganondorf, hasn't gone full evil, like 100%, like he just wants to decimate Hyrule, but he definitely doesn't care for Hyrule for pretty much all the same reasons in the past, like my people are suffering or whatever, or we have to live in this harsh environment while you guys get to chill in these nice, cool looking, places. That, basic Ganondorf stuff. So they go across the campaign. They go across Hyrule. They meet with Ganondorf. One other cool idea I had, because Link never talks, right? So Hyrule Warriors, whether you like that game or not, they did get one cool thing right. Link never talks in that game either, right? But you know who does talk? His fairy. So we're going to give Link a fairy, and the fairy's going to do all the talking. But my design for Link in this game is, I got a lot of influences from Hyrule Warriors. You're gonna like kind of pick up here in a minute. So this Link's got a scarf. It's not a big long one like in Hyrule Warriors. It's a more normal sized one. But then we find out when we meet up with Ganondorf that they've already had a battle. Like him and Link have already scrapped, right? And Ganondorf was able to freaking slit some of his throat, and he's got a nasty scar under that scarf, and that's why he can't talk. He literally cannot. Ganondorf took that from him, and Ganondorf like teases him about it when they meet up. And of course Link wants the salty run back, but so when they get there, Ganondorf is like, all right, me and Link, let's run it back, and then I'll hear you out, because Zelda's coming at him. She's coming at him like with all of this stuff that she's learned, like all, she's trying, Zelda's very diplomatic. She's trying to come at him, in a respectable way. And her logic is like, if we can convince him that what we're telling him is true, like he'll join our cause. Because Ganondorf is somebody who doesn't like to be under the thumb of anyone, be it God or divine prank, whatever. Like that's just who he is. So he's like, I'm not gonna hear you out until me and Link have our salty run back. So another thing, it's just piggybacking off of Ganondorf fighting Link. I do want some battles to have so like basically like dynamic outcomes is what I'm calling it. So for example, like when Link and Ganondorf throw hands again, you don't necessarily have to win that battle. It will be winnable. Honestly, I won't even make it that difficult, because this is like maybe at the start of the middle of the game, maybe even the end of the first half of the game, or the first part of the game, in my head. But basically, I want there to be certain points in certain battles that do not 100% dictate or demand, rather, that you win. So for example, like this one, like Link can lose, and a different cutscene or different dialogue will take place, but the story will continue. Not every battle is going to be like that. Just a handful of battles. So like in the beginning, we'll have a tutorial section where like Link is training some knights or whatever, and so like the knights could beat him. And there'll be a different dialogue about that. Or he can beat the knights, stuff like that. Again, not all the time, because if every single battle doesn't matter, then what's the point of even playing the game? So there'll just be a small handful of moments like that, and Link versus Ganondorf is going to be one of those moments where you could win, you could defeat him, or not. So, win or lose, Ganondorf finally decides to hear her out. He hears all this information about the other Zelda, about reincarnation. He thinks it's silly, and he kind of at first comes off as like you came all the way over here to tell me this? Like, this is a joke, right? Now, he's basically showing like he's not interested, but then at the last minute, he decides that he will join her campaign and trying to figure out more about why the reincarnation happens, all that stuff. Because that's what the point of the game is. She finds out that reincarnation's a thing, and now she needs to figure out why. So, Zelda's plan, now that Ganondorf's joined the team, is to travel to these these 4 specific temples in Hyrule, where they've sealed away this artifact. These artifacts in this game are how you gain access to the Sacred Realm. Because in Ocarina of Time, you needed the Spiritual Stones, the Song of Time, and I can't remember if the Master Sword was a part of it or not. I know the Master Sword's how you traveled back and forth through time in that game, but I don't remember if that was actually specifically necessary. But, that's the glory of Zelda, right? Like, every game can be a little different or completely different, because that's what the story calls for. Zelda has always been a story-focused game, as far as I'm aware. I mean, they've even said as such. So, these 4 items will open the Sacred Realm. So that's like the middle part of the game. You're going through all these dungeons, blah, blah, blah. You open the Sacred Realm. You gain access to it, because the Sacred Realm is the closest a mortal can get to, like, all the divine beings, the sages, the goddesses even. So when the Sacred Realm, there's more dungeons in there, right? You you go around and you gain the trust of the sages. Because all Zelda wants is an audience with the goddesses. And he's asking all these people, like, hey, did you know that, the Triforce Wielders are reincarnated? Like, why is that? Why is it only the Triforce Wielders? Blah, blah, blah. So you gain the trust of all the sages. They tell you how to gain an audience with the goddesses. You go deeper into the Sacred Realm, like beyond the point of any game has ever showed. Oh man, I'm running out of time. This sucks. I'm sorry guys, I know this is lame, but I'm gonna have to leave you hanging here. I'll catch you in a little additional part or something.